Hello and welcome to the Leader Campus series. Today I'm going to share with you the recording of the workshop that we had in my Bramble room just a few days ago called Ethical Challenges in the Workplace. I hope you enjoy the recording. It will give you a feel of what the presentation was all about and the kinds of things that we did while we were in my favorite place. All right, let's get started.
Welcome to my Bramble office, which normally doesn't have like big Chrome problems the day before. This has been my happy place this year. You can see, and afterwards, feel free to explore. There, I have a little office in there, in here, I should say, on the other side. And yesterday, I had 1,000 visits from my students because there's a big project that is due soon. And what happens is I just leave my tab open while I work on my research or correcting papers or whatever in the other tabs. And when a student needs me, they just come straight to my office and then talk to me, and I stop what I'm doing, answer their questions, and then they leave, and then I continue. It's like it were my office, and I customized it to put my dogs in there and to put my little carpets and change. And I'm still imagining all sorts of fun things that I'm planning to do. All right, slide 3, everybody. So if you're detecting an accent, I'm originally from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This is actually a picture of a beach that is pretty close to where my mother lives, and I am going there next week. So I'm extremely thankful for the Pfizer vaccine and whoever created it, because it's allowing me to be there with my mom and her 90th birthday. So that's Rio. Go to slide 4, please. So this is my family. We're huge Disney fans. This is my husband, Mel, my daughter, Maggie. Super proud of Maggie. She is about to start her PhD at Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. She's very passionate about, it's clinical psychology, and she wants to specialize in the deaf community. So she started teaching herself ASL when she was 9 or 10, and then she learned it at Drake University, and now she's on her way to start her PhD all in ASL. So we're incredibly proud of her and wishing her well. And this is Drake University, where I teach. Shameless plug. I direct a master's in leadership development, of which I'm incredibly proud. I was just chatting with Emmeline just now. She is a graduate of our program. So welcome, Emmeline, and thank you for being here. Okay, and the last thing that I wanted to say before we actually get into the actual presentation is that I am passionate about technology. So all my students know that I will have like 65 different ideas and 1,000 different tools, and I'm always learning new ones. And so I often run what I called tech talks. This one is a lead talk because it's about leadership, but I also run tech talks. And the tech talks are about the latest technology toy that I discovered. Okay, so some tips and logistics. Oh, I am saying this session is being recorded and I totally forgot to record. Caleb, are you recording? Caleb? I think Caleb is busy. Caleb, are you recording?
Nope, sorry, just clicking through some buttons. Yes, I am recording. Sav is recording. So thanks for everyone for joining us. And yes, we are recording the session.
Okay, great. Awesome. Now, I know that for many of you, the famous SHRM number is important. So I'm going to be sharing that SHRM number at the end of the presentation. And also I programmed Eventbrite to send you all a message afterwards with the SHRM number as well, so that you guys can have that for your records. And if you don't have the foggiest idea what SHRM number is, don't worry about it. It only matters to those of us who don't want to take the crazy HR exam again. That's how you get the SHRM certification. Get ready to interact with each other. When it's time to interact with each other, I'm going to send you to another room. In this room, you don't have to worry about microphones. When you get to the other room, you will see some little tables with a white space around them. That white space means it's a private space. So if you sit like sit between parentheses in that table. On that table, you're going to only hear the people around you at that table. That is Chrome, if Chrome allows, if the gods of Chrome allows us to go. Now we are on slide 8. And I already explained to you what happens with the private space. So I'm going to go to slide 9. To ask me a question or contribute, please use the chat. Okay. Okay. And slide 10, I already explained to you what to do, except for one thing. When you go to the other room, just like you clicked on this little green button to see the presentation, if you go to the other room, you're going to notice that each table has a little green thingy that says show briefing, and then you click on it and show website. Those are the participant materials, and there is one at each table. So no matter what table you sit on, there's going to be one. I would say try to sit at a table where there's somebody else so that you can actually discuss with that person whatever it is that is in that briefing, okay? So that's just what I wanted to say in terms of logistics. We're going to slide 11, then I'm going to send a global message saying, everybody come back, and then you please come back to this room. Okay. Slide 12, after the presentation, please feel free to explore. If you go all the way to the left of the other room, you're going to see an area that says go to the rooftop. The rooftop is totally awesome. As you can see in this picture, it's really fun. It has 1,000 little nooks and crannies where people can sit down, a lot of private spaces. So please feel free to explore. And if you don't have time to explore today, feel free to come back and explore my space. It's totally fun. Okay, slide 13. This is so so funny. Like for me to present like that, I've never done it that way. But hey, there's a new one for everything, right? And the question that you see on the screen is, are you ethical? So what I'd like you guys to do, since I can't hear you saying yes or no, is first of all, think about it. Like think about it for yourself. Are you ethical? And then if you think you are ethical, just say yes on the chat. And I'm just going to see how many yeses I'll see on the chat. People can still see the chat, right? Caleb, can people still see the chat? Yes, you can. Awesome. I love that because I can actually see your answers without having to click on the chat. This is perfect. Okay, awesome. This is how I start all my ethics presentations, and this is also how I start my ethics class. I ask people at Drake University when I teach an ethics and leadership class, I ask people, are you ethical? Hold on just a second, because I want to turn on my phone in here just to see what time it is. Otherwise, I will completely forget about the time. I'm known to do that. All right. So I always ask people if they're ethical, and I've done this in big rooms, in big conferences with like 100 people in front of me and keynotes and whatnot, and everybody always feels that they are ethical. And when I ask people why they're ethical, usually the answer is because I learned from my parents, I learned from my family, because my family has very strong values, right? The question is, if we all feel that we're ethical, and if we all are confident that we're ethical, then how come there are so many ethical violations? Are those the people who are not in the presentation? Or is it possible that there is something else going on? And that's what we're going to be going through. Okay, slide 14, please. This is the next question that, hold on just a second, I'm getting my time here. Okay, so this is the other question that I always ask everybody in the beginning of a presentation. I ask, what will you do with the power you were given? And the point I have is that everybody, whether you have official people reporting to you, or whether you're just starting your career, or whether you are, working from home, or whatever your situation is, you have an impact on someone. That someone could be a family member, a friend, or maybe you are in charge of 100 people, 200 people, 500,000 people. I don't know who are in this room. The point is, if you have an influence on someone, you are a leader. And if you are a leader, you have power. So then the question becomes, what will you do with the power you were given? That question is actually not mine. That question was asked of me, or to me. I'm very bad with English prepositions. When I was working on my doctorate at Bowling Green State University in Ohio, and my ethics professor then would ask us all the time, what will you do with the power you were given? So as we go through the various points of this presentation today, think about what you will do with the power you were given. Okay, slide 15, please. So, hold on, I finally know what time it is. Good. So we're going to go first through an ethics dilemma, an office dilemma, and that's when I'm going to send you guys to the other room. Then I'm going to explain to you a model, I guess, a theory that I actually came up with when I was working on my doctorate a while ago. And then I realized, because of course, when you're working on your doctorate, whatever you discover, you think you've discovered something amazing, right? That it's just you. And then when I started learning more, I realized that there were lots of very much better people than I who actually had come up with similar ideas. And I'm going to explain to you what the circle of ethics is and why does it impact the way that we exercise our power. We're going to talk a little bit about the push and pull between compassion and fairness. And then I'm going to end with a call for you to slow down. And there are a few questions that you can ask yourselves as you're trying to handle an ethics dilemma. All right, great. Slide 16, please. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. And I'm just going to give you a brief preview before I send you guys to the other room. So employees must attend a monthly meeting. The yearly bonus, which is worth a month's salary, evidently that company is doing very well and has a very, very generous yearly bonus, is tied to attendance to these meetings. Don't ask me why. I hate meetings too, but that's just the way the story goes. Imagine that you are the human resource manager and you go outside for whatever reason and you observe as an employee is leaving just before the meeting starts. So that's basically the dilemma. And the question that you're going to be asked is, what do you do? Do you denounce the person or don't you denounce the person? So I'm marking down here that this is slide 16 because one thing that I discovered is that when you close this and open something else and start again, you're going to go back to slide 1. So just click, 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 click until we get to slide 16 and we'll continue from there. So I'm going to close mine and I'm going to ask now everybody to go to the other room, find a table, open the briefing and read it and then discuss with your table mates what it is that you would do. And then I'll call you back here.
Everyone, just follow the glowing door to your left back out into the main space. And again, as Chris said, just feel free to grab any table and begin connecting with some folks over the briefing.
Should I go there to help people out, or are people okay?
Chris, I'm going to pop out there and I'll give a quick instructional from there and then head back in here.
Okay.
Laura, Claudia, and Ava, if you just use your arrow keys and follow this glowing door by where my avatar is. Yeah, Laura, it's just down here, a little farther south. You're standing by the brick wall, or I should say the concrete wall. Yep, just follow it down. Perfect. There you go. All right, Claudia, just Everyone, so as Chris said, just go ahead and grab a table, any table you like, and a few folks, and feel free to dive in. You'll just click the green button to open the briefing. Again, just click the green button to open the briefing at each table. And any questions, please feel free to walk over to me. I'll be standing in Chris's office just here.
To attend, but ultimately it's our duty to note the absence as the HR manager.
Got it. Okay, Ashley, thank you. All righty. So is there anybody else who would like perhaps to say something different? Is there any group that came up? Aha, here we come. Come right to the circle right behind you, Kylie. Kylie? Okay, that's all right. I can give you the spot anyway. Oh, there you go. Okay, Kelly. Sorry, I couldn't see your name very well.
No worries. So what we basically talked about the fact that they mentioned that there was an employee who had also missed some meetings who did not get an accommodation and was not given the bonus, and they did not list in that document what that employee's attendance had been like outside of the meetings or what their performance had been like, where they mentioned that this employee was a really great contributor and a really reliable employee outside of these staff meeting absences. And so not having that piece of information was hard because you don't know if there was really discrimination happening or if there wasn't really discrimination happening, because we have to assume those two employees were equal. So we talked about that we would probably, even though it's probably not the most fair answer, that we would probably not report it, but that we would have that conversation again, have that documentation, because we believe that there is absolutely a human aspect, that rules are guidelines, but they don't have to be black and white. And that if you have a really good, dedicated, devoted, reliable, skilled, talented employee, that those are the people that deserve those kinds of accommodations, and you don't want to lose people and not be understanding of that element. So giving those employees some grace was really the center of our conversation.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much, Kelly. All right, I have one question that perhaps you guys could even answer by chat, and that is, how many of you would report the employee? Can you just write that on the chat? Like if you would report, just say report. Oh, okay, me works. So how many of you would report? How many of you would not report? So I'm seeing report, report, report. Is there anybody who would not report? Not sure yet. Okay, there's somebody who is not sure. I would report with an explanation. Okay, awesome. All right, and I have a reason for asking you guys that. So I'm going to go back to the slides now. And at this point, let me open the slide and figure out where I need you guys to go. Following Caleb's suggestion, go to the number and go to slide 18, please. So what I actually asked you, what those briefings were, was actually a study that I did using Linked HR members. Linked HR, if you're not from Linked HR, is a very large group on LinkedIn for HR professionals. And I did that study with one of my grad students and with my brother. And we asked the same question, right? But there was a glitch. There were actually 3 types of briefings, and people were randomly assigned to each of those briefings. In one of the briefings, all you knew was that the employee was a very good employee who was missing the meeting. On the second briefing, you were told that the employee was a very good employee and was missing the meeting, but the child had cancer. Was there anybody who saw that briefing? Did anybody see a briefing that said something about a child having cancer? It's kind of hard to tell because it depends on the table you guys went to. I don't see anybody seeing yes. Me see here, no. And on another one, the employee was a close friend of the person. So the story was exactly the same until it got to the child either had cancer or didn't, and the person was either a close friend or not. And what we wanted to know is, yeah, So Ashley was saying that you guys had the close friend. So what we wanted to know was, is there a difference in the way that people would solve a moral dilemma? So before we get into what the answers were, which were quite interesting, especially considering that we're dealing with HR professionals and managers, let's talk a little bit about what a moral dilemma is. So please move with me to slide 19. So a moral dilemma is a significant problem. So it's a problem with uncertain answers. Go to 20, please. You should see a meteor on the slide. It's a problem with a significant impact. So if it's a problem, just some slight thing, will I buy Skittles or will I buy, I don't know, Fritos? That's not a moral dilemma. That's just how much calories do you want to ingest today for no reason whatsoever. A moral dilemma has a serious impact on somebody. And please go to slide 21. You're between a rock and a hard place. And what I mean by that is that whatever decision you make is both right and wrong. There isn't an easy right answer. And go to slide 22, please. No matter what you do, slide 23, somebody will get hurt. So I'm on slide 23 now. It says somebody will get hurt. So what is important about a moral dilemma is that you can't, there's no way out. Whatever you choose is right or wrong. So for example, if we think about the person who had, the child had cancer and they're missing a meeting, you may think, well, the rules say that the person is missing a meeting, but the child has cancer. Or the other case that Ashley was talking about, it's a very good friend of yours who helped you in a lot of different situations. And then later on with another one of my students, we did a similar study, but this time it was a moral dilemma about being like a free, what's the word that we use, like a social loafer, like somebody who would be in a group and not do the work. And then we wanted to know if the students would do something about it or not do something about it. And as soon as it's a friend, people would not do something about it. That's usually what we find out. So we wanted to know what would happen with the HR professionals. Slide 24, please. Moral dilemmas have to do with difficult choices. Slide 25. Or really impossible choices. Choices between values. Compassion versus justice are two important values. Friendship and loyalty versus your obligation to your organization. Those are important values. So whenever you're dealing with a moral dilemma, you're always dealing with value dilemmas. And which value is going to take place and be most important? Okay, moving on. I am not going to send you to another room in now, because if I do, we're going to run out of time. But I just want you guys to think for yourselves of examples of moral dilemmas that somebody in your role might have. So as a professional in whatever field you're in, what kinds of dilemmas might you experience? And you don't have to share that, just think about that for a moment. Like, for example, for me as a professor, huge moral dilemmas have to do with grading, with cases of plagiarism, with cases of coming up with exceptions. And I may say, well, you know, nobody's going to die. I'm not a neurosurgeon. Yeah, but grades matter. They matter for people's grad school applications. They matter for people who would like to go on to a doctorate. Like, I can't sit down and say grades are irrelevant. They are relevant. They are relevant for other reasons. Okay, slide 27, please. So here's the study that was run. There were, at the end, we sent it to everybody, but we ended up with 1,248 usable answers from members of Linked HR. 69% were female, 76% were Anglophone. That means US, Canada, Australia, so countries that speak English. So you can, just so that you have a sense of the sample, 57% of them were from the HR field and 46% were managers. So here's a question that I'm going to ask you. How many of you think that I found differences between the friend and the non-friend conditions even among managers and HR professionals. If you think there were no differences, go ahead and say, write no differences in your chat. And if you think there were differences, then say there were differences in your chat, or just write differences. I think you guys are not sure. Okay, many of you are saying there were differences. All right, I'm going to open my slides again here and show my thing. And now I have to remember in which slide I was. Let me see. Hold on a second. All right, so please go to slide 28. I'm going to leave you in suspense for a little while before I share the results and explain to you what the circles of ethics are. So move on to slide 29, please. So what are the circles of ethics? And please, slide 30. So the idea behind the circles of ethics came when I was in my doctorate at Bowling Green State University. Don't know if anybody here has heard of Bowling Green State University. It's in a small town in Ohio, kind of central Ohio. And they have a doctorate in leadership studies, which is what I was doing. And it's when I fell in love with ethics. Slide 31, please. And at that time, I was asked to do something that is a very common exercise in ethics development, which is to write my own code of ethics. And I wrote a code of ethics that made Mother Teresa look like nothing, right? Like my code of ethics was amazing. My code of ethics was beautiful. But then, slide 32, please, I started asking myself for whom I would violate my code. And this is my daughter, Maggie. And I was absolutely sure that for my daughter, Maggie, there is very little that I wouldn't do. I would probably not hurt somebody else, or at least not knowingly. But other than that, if you ask me, would I be fair? Probably not. Would I denounce her if I knew she had done something wrong? Probably not. Like, there are lots of things that I probably would do with somebody else that I wouldn't do if it were my daughter. Slide 33, please. This is what Maggie looked like when I was actually working on my doctorate then. Slide 34. So then, slide 34, you should see one of those typical Zoom pictures that a lot of you have, in which you're meeting with your family and wishing somebody happy birthday. So I started asking myself, for who else would I violate my code? Would I violate my code for my family? And slide 35. Would I violate my code for my best friend? This is my best friend, Elisa. We've been friends since we were 12 years old. She is from São Paulo, Brazil. And we still, we still feel like we're 12 when we meet, after all these years. So would I violate my code for her? So slide 36. And how about me? This is me at age 18, I think. I think that's how old I was. So the idea is that the closer you get to yourself, you may be thinking differently. Slide 37. So if you think about a series of circles, you may be in the center, but your children, I would argue that you're more likely to violate your code for your children than even for yourself. And maybe your spouse or your loved one or somebody who's very, very important to you. Maybe you don't have children, but maybe it's your nephews and nieces or somebody who you love very, very much. For whom would you violate your code the most? And then you have the rest of your family, and then you have your friends, and then you have your community, maybe your place of worship if you're a religious person, maybe your country people, the people from your country. And the idea is that as we go, so go to slide 37, please. As we get closer to the center of our circle, we start thinking differently. And slide 39, justice and fairness may require some distance. So the idea is that for you to be fair and just, you need to be a little bit farther away. Slide 40. If you want to have care and compassion, you may require closeness. Okay? So slide 41 kind of summarizes the idea. There are two big paradigms for ethics. One is called the ethics of justice. The other is called the ethics of care. The ethics of care prioritizes relationships and love and compassion and accepts that you may prioritize the people that you love. The ethics of justice is about fairness and universality and treating everybody absolutely the same. And what we found, and at this point you can close the slides because I don't need the slides anymore. I'm just going to tell you what went on. So when I analyzed the data, there was it was not only a significant difference between the friends and the non-friends. There was also a very strong effect. In other words, those HR professionals, they were far more likely to prioritize their friends than their non-friends. And here's another thing. Those of you, how many of you in HR, when I said the child had cancer, thought the famous words FMLA? If you thought about FMLA, go ahead and say yes in your chat so that I can see you. Yes, I see one yes. How many people thought about FMLA? Yes. And of course, it depends because it depends on whether, yeah. So it depends on whether your briefing had a child with cancer or not a child with cancer, right? But the point here is that when we looked at the qualitative data, because we also asked qualitative questions, when we looked at the qualitative data, people thought about FMLA when it was the friend much more than they thought about FMLA when it was not the friend, which is incredible. Like those of us who are in HR are like, you gotta be kidding me. No, I'm not kidding you. People thought more of FMLA when it was their friend. Okay, so my whole point here, when I started this presentation, I asked you all if you were ethical. And all of us think that we are ethical. But the problem is proximity, how close you are to the people who are involved in a moral dilemma, generates what we call a moral intuition. And that moral intuition inspires compassion. In other words, compassion is not an equal opportunity employer. So those of you who say your organization is an open opportunity employer or equal opportunity employer, just know that justice and fairness are far more likely when you're far away. And compassion is much more likely when you're close. There's just one last slide that I want to show you. So open again, and I'll have to discover where it is. It's one of the last ones, and I'll just give you the number. And by the way, in the letter you receive, you also receive the copy of these slides, like the link, so that you can look at them again. And we're going to go all the way to slide 49. That says slow down. Actually, slide 50, because slide 49, all it has is a turtle. Slide 50 has some questions that you may want to ask yourselves. Have you considered other options? Because if you haven't considered other options, then I would argue that you have not made a real decision. Have you considered both compassion and fairness? Have you looked at these angles? Most importantly, have you included people with different perspectives in a big decision? And there should always be people who feel closer and not closer. And by the way, when I say closer, it's not just about friendship. It's about ethnicity. It's about race. It's about culture. It's about religion. So when we think about any diversity and inclusion processes that you're going through in your organization, remember that ethics and proximity are part of that, because we're wired to favor the people who are close to us or whom we see as close to us. Think how scary that is. We are wired to favor the people who are close to us. And the last question is the most important one. Would you make the same decision if the people involved were closer or farther away from you? And I've become kind of a wimpy professor, because when I ask the question, would I make this decision for my most beloved student? If the answer is no, then I don't want to make that decision for anybody else. So my solution was to become extremely wimpy and extremely flexible because I know that I cannot trust my own ethics. So if you go to slide 51, I ask you the same question again. Are you ethical? And what will you do if you go to slide 52? What will you do with the power you were given? On slide 53, you're going to see the SHRM number. It's activity 21 TJCZQ for 1 SHRM credit. If you didn't copy that, don't worry about it because I think you will receive it in about an hour and a half. I programmed the system, and then you will see like that number again, and you will have it for your record. So don't worry if you can't copy it now. If you go to slide 54, you will see my email addresses. You can write me at chris.wildermuth@drake.edu if you have any questions, or chris@theleadercampus.com. Just remember that my name does not have an H, otherwise you're going to go to, cyberspace. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much. And Caleb, you're on.
I just wanted to say thanks everyone for being here, and thanks for shifting your position around the room and coming to explore the space. If anyone has questions about Bramble, I'll be outside actually hanging out in Chris's office. But for those who want to explore the space, feel free to go back outside, head up to the rooftop, or just explore the amazing customizations Chris has made to her world. She's become a pro quite quickly. So cheers. Thanks everyone for being here.
And I want to thank Caleb and the Bramble team for making this space available to me and to my students and to us for this presentation today. So thank you so much, Caleb. All right, goodbye, everybody. And if anybody has questions for me, just come talk to me. I'll go to the other room where it's easier to talk to you guys.